Ladies and
Sure.
gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. As a member of the Second International Conference on Trends in Computational and Cognitive Engineering, this session will be hosted by me, Dr. Risalat Asin Khan, and Manon Binte Taj Noor. We welcome you all to the tutorial session of Dr. Mufti Mahmood on Apache Hadoop and MapReduce, a doorway to big data analytic using distributed computing. This session will be chaired by Mr. Manzoor Mahmood. We hope to have an interactive and practical lesson through this tutorial session. Now, I would like to request our honorable session chair to start the session. Sir, please. Manzoor sir, please. Manzoor sir, are you there with me? Us?
Just a moment, please.
মঞ্জুর ভাই আছেন বাট মিউট করা। হ্যালো মঞ্জু ভাই, Shamim bhai, could you please call him?
Yeah, I'm calling.
If you have them. Okay.
Yeah, I have a number and I'm calling.
Mufti bhai, sorry for this delay. Apnar microphone off.
Mufti sir, we can't hear you.
Yes, don't worry. It's okay. Let me just start sharing my screen.
This is
I hope it's visible, yeah?
yes.
Let me call him for the last time.
Only once.
Yusuf bhai?
Yeah. Session chair start kyun nahi na tutorial session?
I think may I introduce Dr. Mufti Mahmood?
Right. I think we should do it.
Oh, let me introduce Dr. Mufti Mahmood. Dr. Mufti Mahmood is a senior lecturer of computer science at the School of Science and Technology. Dr. Mufti lead the MSc in data analytics for business and the data analytics strength of the online MBA course. Dr. Mahmood is a member of NTU Distance Learning Governance Operation and Steering Committee, as well as the International Mobility Committee. Dr. Mahmood is a senior member of IEEE and ACM, and he has involved with a lot of conference, and he is leading one conference, Big Data Analytics, and he has published near about 100 articles. So without the further delay, I would like to request Dr. Mahmood to present his this tutorial.
Thank you very much, Professor Shamim Kaisar, and the remaining friends and colleagues and elder brothers, junior students, and everybody. Welcome to this session. I really appreciate this opportunity to introduce some of the big data technologies which we have been teaching here at the Nottingham Trent University. And as a part of it, I would like to share some of the practical things that we actually teach here at the master's level. Okay. So the topic is going to be Apache Hadoop and MapReduce. And this is something which has been very popularly used for big data analytics, which harnesses the capability or the benefit of distributed computing. Okay. So, well, I would like to make sure that this is going to be an interactive session. So please, well, if you have any doubt or if you would like to ask anything, stop me anytime and let's have some discussion. Okay, so this session will be divided into two main parts. The first part where I am going to introduce you a little bit about the big data, then a little bit about each of these technologies, the Hadoop and the MapReduce technology. And then the second part is going to be the practical session where I am going to talk about or go through a number of different let's say a number of different commands that you can use in setting up the setting up a node of Hadoop. Okay. Now, what am I going to do? That in the meanwhile, let me share one link with you all, which contains a virtual machine. Okay, so this virtual machine you can download in the meanwhile if you want to carry on the installation process with me. Okay, so you can download the virtual machine from this link. Okay, and once the virtual machine is downloaded, you will have to have the VMware workstation player. So if you do not have that, you can download also the VMware workstation player from this link. So these two links you can probably already start downloading. Okay, if you want to carry on the practical session with me. So let me now move to the real, let's say, introduction part. So what is big data actually? So as of now, there is no standard definition of big data. So big data in a sense is considered as a set of data whose scale, diversity, and complexity requires new architecture, techniques, algorithms, and analytics to manage it and to extract value and hidden knowledge from it. Now, what do you mean by all these things? Because now let me just give you an example. So consider that we have a number of sensors. Yeah. Now, if it is, let's say, a smart grid, okay, so within the smart grid, you have a number of different sensors, and these sensors, they mainly transmit recordings of the smart meters, okay, which are for example, let me just convert it to the pen. So let's say that you have different smart meters located into different houses, and then from those smart meters, you get the readings in a centralized place. Okay, so all these places, they transmit data to a centralized cloud server. So these are smart meters. So if we mention them as SM, okay, and this is the server. Now, what it does is that we know the number of, let's say, smart meters which are there. For example, let's say that you are dealing with 1,000 houses, okay? So you are dealing with 1,000 smart meters. Now these 1,000 smart meters are providing you with the reading every second, okay? Now, you know that how much of data is coming. So you can already have an estimation from how many meters you have, how frequently this data is coming, and what is the size of the data. For example, if you have a data which is 1 byte, okay? So you can already calculate that how much of processing speed you would need. Okay, however, when you have, let's say, social media data, so in terms of the social media data, you actually do not know that how much of data will be generated when, mainly because that social media data is mostly event driven. For example, let's say that the TCCE is going on right now. Now, well, all those people who are connected to TCCE, if you go to your Facebook live, Facebook feed, you will see that most of the people, most of us, the people who are connected to TCCE right now are posting very frequently things related to TCCE. Now, this is something which think at a level where things go viral. Now, in that particular case, what happens is that the processing based on certain event, okay, requires resources which are not, which cannot be predicted beforehand, okay, and that is why this scale comes into picture, okay, that we need to change that how much of resources we need based on the requirement on the fly. Then, well, in the social media, as you can appreciate or understand, there are text, there are audio, there are video, whatnot. So there is a huge diversity of information. The complexity makes it even more complex because, well, how you are going to store this data, how you are going to analyze this data, these different types of data requires different way of handling. Okay. Now that is why you need new architectures, techniques, and algorithms and analytics to manage them. And that is why this big data is something which is special in comparison to the traditional data that we have seen and we have analyzed usually. Okay. Now, moving on, well, from where these data are coming? So these data are coming from everywhere, from the web, from e-commerce, from purchases that we make at the grocery stores, from banks, from credit card transactions, social networks, healthcare, whatnot. So in a nutshell, the data are generated everywhere and every single second. Now, how much of data are we actually generating? Now, here you can see that in 2020, in every minute, well, there is a huge amount of data is being generated. So if we are just thinking of, let's say, the WhatsApp, so, well, you can see how much of messages are being generated in WhatsApp, okay? And in every minute, there are more than 52,000 users are getting connected into Microsoft Teams, okay? And how much of dollar is being spent online every minute. So you can see that, well, there is a huge amount of data. Now putting them into numbers, okay, so you can see that roughly, well, these numbers are never accurate, okay, so roughly Google processes 20 petabyte of data a day. Okay, so there is Facebook, which used to process 2.5 petabyte, okay, of user data. However, well, this is something which is changing very rapidly. Now, another example could be that the CERN's, the Large Hadron Collider, okay, it generates around 15 petabyte of data every year. Okay, so all these things actually they denote that there is a huge amount of data which is being produced, which needs huge amount of processing capability. Now, is the computer power keeping up? Well, in that particular sense, certainly it is able to handle a lot of data. However, while starting from the standard business desktop computers that we have, which usually consume, let's say, 91 watts of, power, and has got roughly a certain amount of cache on board in the memory, and has got certain speed, okay, and it costs certain amount of money. And this is something which we can go all the way up to something like a supercomputer, which costs several million, okay, and has got a lot of memory to be able to process this kind of data. But can you see that the scaling of the price? Okay, so here you can see that it started from, let's say, around $300 to all the way almost 300 million. Okay, so this scaling is not really possible by many of the organizations, okay, many of the nations. So, well, we need alternative technologies, alternative solutions to handle this kind of data, where we can explore the capability of these low-cost computing resources, okay, and then can analyze such huge amount of data. Now, what are big data? How are they actually characterized? Now, big data is, it all started with, let's say, characterizing with something called V's, okay? These V's, they denote the specific properties of the big data. So at the beginning, when it started with only these 3 V's, so people thought that there were only 3 properties. So which is the volume, that how much of data is there, which is the velocity, how often the data is being generated, and the third one is the variety, which means that which different types of data are out there, okay? And you can see that it all started with the ERP data, and then gradually as time went, okay, as time progressed, the people's necessity changed, okay? So the data variety and the complexity increased. At the same time, the amount of data increased. And now we are in the era of big data, where we think about sentiment analysis, and where we think about the analyzing the HD video, audio, images, and everything for a number of different purposes, okay? But that is something which was several years ago, starting with the initial 3B. Now, gradually, well, people from 3 made it 4, where they added something called a veracity. Now, what is the veracity? That is data always telling the truth? Okay, are the data which we are getting providing the accurate information or not? Okay, so making sure that the data is consistent, okay, the data is complete, the data is not ambiguous, okay. So reducing or making sure that the amount of uncertainty in the data is reduced or less is something which is known as veracity. Okay, so that is the 4th V or property which was made which was added to big data. Now let me just quickly go ahead. Is there any question? Okay, so
I think no question. Okay.
Okay. So I would request that if anyone is not really having any question, please keep the mics muted. Otherwise, so that way we will be able to quickly identify if someone has any question. So let me just very briefly go through all these different V's. Okay, so the first one starts with the volume. So volume, as we know, that it is regarding the scale, as you mentioned, that it has increased, the data volume has increased almost 44 times from 2009 to 2020, and which denotes literally from 0.8 zettabytes to 35 zettabytes, okay? And this is something which you can see, and we all know that it is something which is increasing exponentially, only because that, well, the amount of sensors or the different sources that we have to capture this data have increased tremendously, okay? Now, let's move to the second one. The second is the variety, is the complexity. As you can see that while we have now the social media data, which is one of the biggest examples, that we have the text, images, audio, video, sequence, whatnot in the social media. Okay, so they come in variety of formats, variety of various types and structures. Okay, and then very recently, what we are actually dealing with is the streaming data. Okay, so as from many different sensors, the data are getting generated. So can we actually analyze them on the fly? So it is to extract the knowledge. All these different types of data will have to be put together, and then made the appropriate sense of the data. So there is a variety of data which is out there. Now, in terms of speed, okay, in terms of the velocity, so these data are generated very fast, so they need to be processed very fast, okay. And the examples which we see mainly in the business domain, okay. So, for example, you would like to do some promotion, okay. So on the current location, if you analyze the customer purchase history and what you like and not like, so if you cannot send the promotion on the right time, well, people will probably not be interested in that particular product anymore. Okay, and especially in case of healthcare industry, okay, where the faster processing speed is something which is very much needed, because you are trying to let's say predict a person's physiological characteristics or status based on the data that you record on the fly. Okay, so this faster processing or speed in processing is something which is very much needed. Now, as I mentioned, the fourth one was the veracity or the reliability on the data. Okay, so this is something which still have been a big issue. Okay, so we are now never before in a situation like this where misinformation has been so prevalent. Okay, that people are always concerned whether these data to be trusted or not. Okay, so as you know that all these fake news things, well, these fake news, can we really trust those fake news, because they are also data and they are also contributing in the generation of value if you are not really making sure that they are fake data. So if you are unable to identify those fake data or separate those fake data from the real data. Okay, so making sure that how accurate the data set is a big challenge. Okay, so actually that is one of the biggest challenges that big data is facing right now. Okay, so making sure that the data is trustworthy and the data is unbiased. Okay, and there are no abnormalities or inconsistencies in the data. Okay, so this is something which is very important, and as a response to it, actually 27% of the world's leading organizations or companies chief executives, they are very much reluctant to trust on the data as is. So without the veracity, without confirming that these data are something which is trustworthy, this around more than one fourth of the CEOs of big, large organizations, they tend not to trust the data as they come. Okay. So along with these four, there is a fifth one, okay, which is yet another important one, and it is something which is the value, which means that, well, the big data that we have, okay, at the end of the day, okay, so the fifth one is actually the value. So the value is that once we have all this data, we made sure that all these properties of the data are intact. Okay. Now we would like to get some useful information on knowledge extracted from this data, and that is what is important. So if we cannot really extract any knowledge, okay, or extract any useful insight from the data, then the data is of no use. So from that particular perspective, this value is something important. And these list of V's are not really something which is restrictive, okay, people have been coming, organizations are adding new Vs. So as of now, we can also see that there are other Vs which are important, such as the visualization. Okay, and then there is this something called viscosity. There is something called virality. Okay, so let's not get into the details of this, but the bottom line is that, well, these number of properties to make sure that the data which we would like to make good use of needs to be very accurate and satisfies all these properties. So now, how can we harness this big data? And this is something which actually started, the data harnessing started from very beginning. Okay, so it was something which started with the OLTP, okay, the online transaction processing, and then gradually it moved to the OLAPs. Okay, so starting from the database management systems, the relational database management system. From there we moved gradually to the data warehousing in the late 1980s, and then gradually from there we are now talking about, as I mentioned, the stream computing or stream processing, which is the real-time analytics processing, or RTAP. So all these things actually they have contributed in the data generation, and finally the RATP is the one which is mostly responsible for the big data generation of big data. Okay, now what we are talking about in terms of the type of data. Okay, so there can be the relational data. Okay, that's the traditional data that we have in terms of the tables, transactions, legacy. Okay, there are the text data, which is harnessed from the web, and there are semi-structured data, there are graph data of social networks, semantic web, and whatnot. Okay, and eventually the finally, which is the biggest challenge in terms of big data, is the streaming data. Okay, where data are continuously generated, and at the same time those data are actually also processed continuously. So what do we do with this data? Well, we can aggregate and perform different statistics. Okay, for that we have the data warehouse and the OLAP technologies. We can do indexing, searching, querying. Okay, and finally we can most importantly do knowledge discovery. So that is where is actually our main goal, that we would like to extract some knowledge out of the data which is in hand. Now, the data generation at the old age, okay, which is like, let's say pre-2000, was different from how we are seeing them right now. So this model actually has changed in the sense that previously, well, we had the data. Okay, now these data were consumed by the people. For example, think of the traditional model of newspapers. Okay, so the customers used to go to the newspaper and used to read newspapers. But nowadays what happens, thanks to the social media, we all are generating news and we all are consuming those news. Okay, so this model has changed, and this is something, yet another reason that big data technologies are becoming more important. Okay, now what are the technologies that we have for big data? So well, here in the big data landscape, as you can see that, well, in terms of technology, it's enormous. Okay, so the industry, it has adopted this technology so quickly and so rapidly that the technology it has evolved enormously, and almost all the big companies, they actually have invested in these big data technologies. However, the base technology lies with something called Hadoop, okay, which is like the ecosystem, and a specific, very specific programming paradigm, which is called MapReduce. Okay, so these are the, let's say, foundations of all these discoveries and all these different technologies which are sitting on the top. Okay, so in today's session, we are going to very briefly, well, in no way you can think that this is something which is a complete introduction or a complete description of Hadoop and MapReduce. I'm just going to touch upon these two technologies so that, well, you can build on the top of them in the coming days as needed. Okay, So now let's try to see what is Hadoop. Hadoop is actually an open source framework, okay, that allows distributed processing of large data sets across clusters of commodity hardware. Now here the main point is the commodity hardware. Now what do you mean by commodity hardware is that it is something which is like the everyday computers that we use. Okay, as we have seen at the beginning, that we can analyze large amount of data using very big hardware or very big supercomputers. However, the price goes exponentially high. Okay, so if we are using, let's say, 100 daily usable computers, and if we can join together all those power together, now that is something which is going to be of same power if we would like to use a supercomputer. Okay, however, the price of this commodity hardware is going to be quite low or quite less. That is why it is something which is very usable. Now, from Hadoop's perspective, well, it started in 2002. Okay, so it was started with something called as a notch project by dog cutting. Okay, now it then gradually proceeded between 2003 and 2004 when Google first published the Google file system. So that is something which actually made a breakthrough. Okay, and proposed the novel programming paradigm called MapReduce. Okay, and these are the research scientific papers that they published in 2003 and 4. Okay, and then dog cutting added the distributed file system. For example, a file system similar to the one published by Google, called Google File System, and MapReduce into the Notch project. Okay, and then in 2005 and 6, in 2000 and at the end of 2006, the Hadoop as a project called Lucene was actually started. Now, this is something which goes on, and in 2007, first the New York Times used this Hadoop technology, okay, to analyze some of their large amount of data, and this is something which then kicked in a number of different technology and further, let's say, improvement and advancement in the big data technology itself. And well, post 2009, there has been a large amount of explosion in terms of the technologies which are out there right now. Now, this Hadoop ecosystem, it has got 4 specific components. Okay, so there is something called Hadoop Common, okay, which contains the libraries and the necessary modules for Hadoop to run. Then there is something called HDFS, or Hadoop Distributed File System. So this distributed file system makes sure that the data is distributed in smaller chunks for each of these commodity hardware to process. Okay, then how these specific processes are maintained or handled are handled by a technology called Yearn, yet another resource negotiator. So this is the one which is responsible for, let's say, dealing with the different components or different individual individual resources, okay, individual nodes or the commodity hardwares, and how they are going to work together. This is something which is ensured by something called Yarn. And this MapReduce is actually a programming model, okay, which makes use of this distributed programming to make sure that the computation is done appropriately. Now, as I mentioned, that Hadoop has got 3 key parts. Okay, the first part is the Hadoop distributed file system, then there is the Yearn, and then there is the MapReduce. Okay, now Hadoop deals as nodes. Okay, so there is the main node, and the main node has got 2 other two separate let's say nodes, which is called the master node and the slave node. So the master node is responsible for managing the jobs, whereas the slave nodes are the ones who actually carry out the job in the real time. Okay, so in the master node we have resource manager, okay, and we have name node, okay, whereas in the slave node we have node manager and the data node where the real processing actually takes place. Now the resource manager and the node manager is something which is handled by Yarn, okay, the resources, as we can understand, whereas the name node and the data node are handled by the Hadoop, the distributed file system, because they are the one which actually handles the data and eventually the processing. Now, these are the things which will be needed for us to see that, well, when we do the installation, how we are actually going ahead with the installation, okay? And so now let us move very quickly to the MapReduce. So MapReduce, what is MapReduce? MapReduce is actually a programming paradigm where we have mainly two different processes. One is called the mapping process. So that is why it comes as map. And the other one is actually something called a reducing process. So what happens, well, think it in that way, that we have these Cs, okay? These Cs are the data. Now, once we have those data, they are distributed into very small parts, and they are given to something called mappers. Okay. Now, what these mappers do is that the mappers actually then do some initial processing. Okay. So the processing of the data, and then what they generate is something called intermediate outputs. Now, these intermediate outputs are then brought into yet another process called the reducers. Now, before they actually come to the reducers, what happens is that there is a sort of a shuffling process, okay, an internal sorting and shuffling process, which makes sure that similar things are grouped together, okay. Now, when the similar things are grouped together, now these reducers then eventually produce the final output, okay. So this is roughly the concept. This is roughly the concept that, well, we have the map phase and the reduce phase. So in the map phase, we do the mapping, okay? So mostly the processing of the individual data chunks actually takes place in the mapping phase, okay? So these intermediate outputs which come already contains the results of the individual analysis performed by each of these nodes. Now, in the reduce phase, what happens is that all these data, which were let's say done by these individual computers, are brought back together. Okay, so they are summarized and they are put together to generate the final output. Now, there is a very important concept which is called the key value pairs. Now, these key value pairs are the ones that are used for using in MapReduce, which means that, well, you have a specific key and you have the associated value to that key, so that, well, we know that which key goes with which value, and then we can join them together when we are doing the reduce phase. Okay, so initially what happens that the input big data that we have, okay, that big data, when we divide them into small chunks, which are called also input splits, okay, they are divided into pairs of keys and values. Then we perform the mapping function. Once the mapping function is performed, so the intermediate outputs are generated, okay, which are again a modified key value pair. Now, from that modified key value pair, we perform the reduce function. Okay. Now, in that reduce function, we have the final output, which are again a reduced, let's say, a version of the key value pairs from the intermediate outputs. Okay. So roughly, this is how it would work. Now, let us move into the practical session now. Okay. So as I mentioned, you will have to download you'll have to download the virtual machine that I have shared the link. Okay. Now, once, can you still share my screen? Can you still see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we are
Yeah.
seeing.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So here, well, for example, when you actually download it, you download it as a bare hadoop.7z file, okay, which is roughly 2.5 gigabyte. Now, well, you would need any, let's say, unzipping software to unzip it. So after unzipping it, you will get with these number of files here. Now you will also have to install the software, the virtual machine software. Okay, so I am going to use the VMware Workstation Player. Now it is.
I'm sorry, Mukti sir, can I ask a quick question, please?
Yes, yes,
Is
please
it
go ahead.
the VMware Windows based?
Well, it is something. Let's say that if you're using Linux, you can download Linux. If you're using Mac, so the workstation player is not going to work. So then you'll have to use Fusion, VMware Fusion. Okay. But this particular virtual machine was actually created for Windows-based systems.
Okay, thank you.
Because this within this virtual machine, what we have is we have a distribution of Ubuntu here. So we have Ubuntu 20.04 installed here. Okay. So what we are going to do, we are going to start the bare hadoop.vmx. Okay. So when I double click the bare hadoop.vmx file, it is going to start the virtual machine. So I'm going to take the ownership. Now this is something which is going to start. I'm going to say I just moved it. So I'm not going to install anything more right now. So let's just give it some time. Ubuntu is starting, yeah. Now there are two specific requirements here, okay? So let me also share a password which we have for this virtual machine, okay? So the password is welcome 100 and double exclamatory sign, okay? So this is which is the password for the Ubuntu, okay? So here we actually have Ubuntu installed. Now Ubuntu, this version of Ubuntu which is installed here, okay, has got only one user, okay? The user is called Hadoop. Okay, so as you can see here, so that is the default user who is the admin of this installation. Now, what we are going to do here is that we are going to start with the terminal. Okay, so we are going to start with the terminal. Now, two specific things that you need to have here at this particular stage. One thing is that you need to have the access to the terminal, okay? So we do have access to the terminal, and the other thing is that, well, you have the sudo or the root privilege on on this particular machine. Okay, so well, I am showing it from the perspective of a virtual machine, but well, whoever is already using a Linux distribution can actually use these directly. Okay, so whoever is using Linux do not really need to download the virtual machine, because well, I am using a Windows-based system. That is why for the demonstration purpose, I am actually using the virtual machine. Now, at the very first step, as the very first step, what we need to do is, let me just minimize this. Let me open a notepad where I will be able to tell that what are the specific stages that we need to execute. Okay, so the very first stage that we need is install JDBC. Okay, or actually the JDK to be precise. Okay, so we need to install the JDK because, well, you know that Hadoop is something which is totally written in Java. So you need the JDK. So here what we are going to do is we are actually going to install OpenJDK, and that is something which you are going to do by just let us just start with a sudo apt update. Okay, so as I mentioned that the password is welcome 100 double dot. Okay, so just to make sure that we have the updated packages and everything for us to deal with. Okay, now in terms of the Apache Hadoop that we are going to install is we are going to install Hadoop 3.0. Okay, so now that is something which actually is supported by Java 8. Okay, now let's hope that it's not updating something large. Okay, good. Now that we have done that one, now let's just quickly install the OpenJDK 8. Okay, so we are going to install over an OpenJDK 8 saying sudo apt install. Okay, now I am going to say OpenJDK -8 -JDK and with the Y option. Okay, so as you can see that, well, it is now starting to install the OpenJDK. So it is downloading. So it is around 28.2 megabyte. So now here, let me just quickly write the command if you would like to. So it is sudo apt install OpenJDK -8 -JDK and with the Y option. Okay. So once that is being installed, we can quickly see that, well, the versions that we have, whether they are the one which are correct or not.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Will this work with OpenJDK version 11 or we need just version 8?
Well, right now the main reason that I say to install 8 because it has been tested with 8.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now I have not tested it with 11, so you can try, because the version of Hadoop that we are going to install works seamlessly with OpenJDK version 8. Okay. Okay, so once we have the installation completed, let us just check that which Java version that we have right now installed. Okay, so and then which is the compiler version we have. Okay, so if we do that, we can see that, well, we actually have the OpenJDK version 1.8. Okay, So and also the Java compiler is the 1.8. So this is just to let you know that, well, this is something which works seamlessly with the Hadoop installation that we are going through. Now let us just create another user, okay, who is going to be the admin of the Hadoop installation. So we are going to install or let's say create a user for the Hadoop environment. Okay, so before we do that, let us just install the OpenSSH. Install OpenSSH because we'll have to do the SSH. Okay, so we'll have to install the OpenSSH. Let's install with sudo apt install OpenSSH server, okay, and OpenSSH client. So once the OpenSSH clients and servers have been installed, then we'll have to create a user for the Hadoop cluster. Okay, so we are just going to do that by doing sudo add user. So here, so we are going to create a user with the command called sudo user, like sudo add user. So for example, I am going to call this as Hadoop. Okay, just not to make it too different from the other one. So I'm just going to put one dummy password for this. Okay, so I'm not going to use any of the other details. I'm going to say that the details are correct and that's it. Okay, so for the Hadoop cluster, and let's make it a little bigger. And that is something which is, I'm going to say sudo add user Hadoop. Now I am going to, oops. I'm going to move to the Hadoop user. Okay. So I have moved into the Hadoop user, but before I move into the Hadoop user, it is probably worth, okay, to give some admin access to the Hadoop user as well. Okay. So let me just go back to there and then actually we can proceed without also that. Okay, now we can next create the SSH login credentials. So SSH keygen. So we can do the RSA. Okay. -f. Now this is the tricky part. .ssh id underscore RSA. Okay, so it is going to create a specific key. Now, once this key is being created, okay. Now, as you can see here that, well, it has created a key, okay, for making this password-free login to the SSH, okay. Now, let's just add this key which is being created to the authorized key, and that is something we can do by concatenating it to the authorized key locations, and that is something which can be done by adding the RSA file that we have created, okay, to the place where the keys are, okay. So that is something which we know that it is at the SSH and / authorized underscore keys. So that is where if we do, it is something which is added to the authorized keys, okay. Now, what we are going to do is that we are now going to SSH to the local host to make sure that we are now accessing the local host. Yes, we would like to set up this connection, and it is now permanently added there, okay. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to go to the official Hadoop page, okay. So let me just come here. So if we go to the official Hadoop page, what we are going to do is, let me just actually provide this link directly. So as a part of number 4, we actually created password-free login. And let's just set up. Using SSH keygen. So our 5th step is now to download and install Hadoop basic files. And that is something which I would say that, well, here, if you go to the different releases, okay, so here is the Hadoop, okay. So if you go to documents, you can see the different releases, okay. So if you go to download, you can see the different releases. What we are going to do here in this particular case is that we are mainly trying to get the 3.2.1, okay. So this is the one of the let's say stable releases, okay. We know that there is no issue with this one, okay. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to copy the binary link, okay. So we have copied this link address, and once we have copied this link address, what we'll have to do is we can just simply do wget and the link address, okay. So again, well, we copied the link from the binary, the release that we want. Here we are going to do the 3.2.1, okay. And that is what, when we copied using wget, we are simply going to install that, okay. So now we can see sorry, well, I'll have to actually select, that is what was the mistake, one of the mirrors, okay. So we can actually select, I'm going to select the original one, okay. So I'm going to do again wget, paste, and this is something which is going to download the the Hadoop. Now, once the Hadoop is downloaded, so here we have, so from there, so as you can see that we want actually 3.2.1 binary. Simply, as soon as this download is completed, what we'll have to do then is just unzip the tar file. Okay, so here you can see that while we are downloading a tar file, okay, so we'll have to unzip this tar file. Now, doing this unzipping, let me just jump the gun a little bit, will provide us with all the necessary files to then start configuring, okay, the Hadoop cluster. Now, in itself, we have actually installed the Hadoop system once we are doing the unzip. So here we are going to do the unzip using the tar function. So I'm going to use the xzf, okay. Then we have the Hadoop and so let me just check. Return status 1.
স্যার আগে গান জিপ করতে হবে না, শেষে জিজেড আছে, নাকি টার দিয়ে সরাসরি হবে স্যার?
টার দিয়ে হওয়ার কথা সরাসরি।
তাহলে স্যার ওই ইয়াতে ইনপুটের জন্য -xzf দিবেন না স্যার?
না, মানে xzf দিলেই হয়।
তাও কথা।
তার মানে বোধহয় পুরোপুরি ডাউনলোড হয় নাই, বোধহয় করাপ্ট হয়ে গেছে বোধহয়।
জি স্যার, তাই মনে হচ্ছে।
Let us just see that this is something which is downloaded. Sorry.
ভাই মুফতি, আমি মঞ্জুর বলছি।
জি মঞ্জু ভাই।
এই যে এই প্রসেস গুলো চলার সময় অডিয়েন্সকে কিছু ব্যস্ত রাখতে হয়, কিছু গল্প টল্প বলতে হবে না? নটিংহাম কেমন, নটিংহামের রাস্তায় কি হচ্ছে, নটিংহাম ফরেস্ট কি এখনো ফার্স্ট ডিভিশনে খেলে কিনা, তাহলে তো অডিয়েন্স ঘুমায় যাবে।
অডিয়েন্সও আপনার এই যে আমাদের সাথে এই কাজকর্ম করবে, তবে আপনি যেটা বলেছেন সেটা ঠিক বলেছেন।
আমি অনেক বছর আগে নটিংহাম ফরেস্টের সাপোর্টার ছিলাম, বুঝছো? তোমার ইউনিভার্সিটির নামটা দেখে মনে হলো, ও মাই গড, আই শুড মিট দিস গাই।
নটিংহাম ফরেস্ট
অ্যামেজিং
এক সময় তো অনেক অ্যামেজিং টিম ছিল, দ্যাটস রাইট। কিন্তু এখন তো আপনার আসলে তারা আপনার এতখানি ভালো অবস্থায় নাই আর কি।
এই জন্য হাডুপ ব্যবহার করতে হবে, বিগ ডেটা ব্যবহার করতে হবে, যাতে তারা আরো ভালো খেলে।
রাইট।
আসলে ক্লাসিক্যাল কম্পিউটার সায়েন্স হ্যাজ নট চেঞ্জ এ বিট। আমি 30 বছর, মানে ইনফ্যাক্ট 30 না, 86 এর কথা বলতেছি, যখন আমরা জেনিক্স কাজ করতাম এবং আমরা আল্ট্রিক্স এ কাজ করেছি অনেক। তখন ডিজিটাল ডেক বলে একটা কম্পিউটার ছিল, ডেক।
জি।
তো এবং আমি প্রচুর শেল প্রোগ্রামিং করতাম এক সময়, সি শেলে, বন্ড শেলে, কর্ন শেলে, প্লাস প্রচুর আমাদের সময় অনেকগুলো টুল ছিল যেগুলো দিয়ে আমরা টেক্সট পার্সিং করতাম। So those are amazing things, classical জিনিসগুলো আসলে it always prevails.
এখনো আপনার তো এই যে এইসব বেশিরভাগ জিনিসপত্র তো আপনার ক্লাসিক্যালি ওই লিনাক্স বেস সিস্টেমেই হয় আর কি।
মানে
UI UX জি,
UI UX যতই করুক, আসলে আইটির লোকজন কিন্তু সবাই কমান্ড প্রম্পটে কাজ করতে পছন্দ করে, স্পেশালি যারা সিরিয়াস ডেভেলপার।
সেটাই জি।
আমরা অকে কাজ করতাম প্রচুর, অক ছিল টেক্সট পার্সার। আমাদের সময় ইট ওয়াজ ভেরি পপুলার। কোন বড় কোনো টেক্সট পার্সিং করতে হলে we used to use a lot of awk.
রাইট। ওইটা অবশ্য আমরা যখন করছি, আমরা করতে করতে ওই টেকনোলজি অলরেডি আপনার অত বেশি ইউজ হতো না আর কি। তো আমি তো বোধহয় আপনার 10 বছর পরে করছি বোধহয়। আমি যেমন আপনার শুরু করলাম যখন 1998-এ, তখন অলরেডি একটু মুভ করে গেছে আর কি।
রাইট। না, আমরা 90s এ দেখলাম কি বলে লট অফ সান মাইক্রো আসা শুরু করলো উইথ UI UX, সান মাইক্রো সিস্টেমের।
রাইট।
তো
ওকে, তাহলে আমরা এখন এই আমাদের mainly the Hadoop has been unzipped, which means that the installation is somewhat complete of Hadoop. Now what we need to do is we need to now configure the Hadoop. এখন কনফিগার করতে গেলে এখানে মেইনলি কয়েকটা জিনিস কনফিগার করতে হয়। প্রথমে আমাদের এনভায়রনমেন্টটা কনফিগার করতে হবে। তো এনভায়রনমেন্ট কনফিগার করতে গেলে আমাদেরকে ব্যাশ আরসি যে ফাইলটা আছে, সেই ব্যাশ আরসি ফাইলটাতে আমাদের হাডুপের যে রিলেটেড যে ফোল্ডারগুলি আমরা যে ক্রিয়েট করলাম, এই ফোল্ডারগুলি আমাদের সেখানে ইনক্লুড করতে হবে। Now, how do you do that? We can do that using the command nano bash rc. Now here you can see that this is the default environment file. Okay. Now in this default environment file, there are the Hadoop related folders that we need to put here. So these Hadoop related folders are, for example, let me just say export Hadoop. First, the home is where we have just unzipped this one. So it is going to be the home Hadoop and then Hadoop. So we did 3.2.1. Here we can see this one. Okay. So I can just copy this. .2.1. So this is the home. Now let's try to export the installation folder. Okay, so the Hadoop install is the Hadoop home. Now then we are going to export other things such as the MapReduce home. Okay, so underscore home. And this is also something which is going to be the Hadoop home. So let me just copy this. And then common. So there are these different components, okay? And these components we are just simply going to provide the path whenever it will be needed. Now for the Hadoop HDFS, then the yarn, we need the common library, the native directory is going to be the Hadoop home. Then within the Hadoop home, we have the lib and this native. Okay. Export, then the basic path. So we'll have to update the path to Hadoop home. And within Hadoop home, we'll have to go to sbin. And then the other one that we'll have to do is Hadoop home. And within the home, we'll have to focus the bin as well. Okay. And finally, the optional ones. So if we say Hadoop OPTS, so the optional ones. So the optional ones, we are going to define the Java libraries. The Java library path to be, again, the Hadoop home / the library and the native. So here what we are going to now do is we are going to write it out. Okay, and then we are exiting it from there. Now what we need to do here is we need to source this information. So oops. We just need to make sure that the bash RC is being sourced. Okay, so all these information that we have just updated are now present in are now already applied. Okay, within the environment. Now what we are going to do next is we are now going to start with the Hadoop environment file, and we are going to provide some information in there. Now when we are going to open the file, so that the Hadoop environment file is now, how can we make sure that this information that we have just updated is being that we entered in the bash RC or the updated the environment, whether they have been applied or not? We can simply say Hadoop _home, and this is something which will give us where the Hadoop home is actually located. Okay. So this is something which makes sure that the file that we have just updated is actually being applied within the environment, current environment that we are working on. So now we are going to use that information, okay, to start updating the remaining environment. So it is going to be Hadoop home etc. Within etc we have the Hadoop, and then the Hadoop okay. So it should have been Hadoop environment.sh. No, which means that this slash should not have been there. Okay, this is also not correct. So we'll have to probably do this. Let us do the ls to make sure. Hadoop environment dot. So if we do nano, so now here we are going the Hadoop, then Hadoop underscore environment.sh. Right. Now here we can see that, well, there is the Java home. Okay, we need to set the Java home to the correct location, okay, so that it can understand where the Java file is. So here Hadoop home, here this one is the Java home, so we can just mention where the Java home is. So the Java home in our case is under the user, then lib, then we have JVM. Under JVM we have Java 8 OpenJDK, and then AMD 64. So this is something which you can also check out. Okay, so let me use another one here. You'll be able to see. So if we are trying to see where is user, then lib, Then within leave you have JVM. So user leave JVM. Now you can see here that, well, this is the one that we are actually trying to use, okay? So yes, once we have done that, we can just save this, exit. And then the next one is now going to be, the next one is going to be updating the core site of the XML. So we are again going to do the nano. So it remains up to Hadoop is correct. Then we are going to update the core site. So here we can see that there are a number of different configurations that we need to put. Now these configurations are starting with mentioning something called property. So this property that we have just started. So closing the property. So the name is so name of the property is going to be the Hadoop.temporary directory. So we are going to mention a temporary directory here. Okay. Now what is the so let me just put it in this single line maybe. So the name is the temporary directory. Now what is the temporary directory? So the value for the temporary directory is going to be home Hadoop, then temp data. Okay, and this is something which is going to be the value for the temporary directory. Now similarly, we'll also have to provide the file system's different default location. So for that, let me just copy this for the sake of doing it quickly. Okay. Now when we are we have mentioned the temporary directory. Now what we need to do is we need to mention here the default location. Okay, so now default name, that is what we'll have to mention, but here we have to mention the location. So the location is something which we'll have to say HDFS as the distributed file system. Now within the distributed file system, the location of the local host. So it is going to be 127.0.0.1 and the usual port is 9000. So this is about the core site, okay, that we are going to mention the core site there. So once the core site has been mentioned, now we'll have to create the temporary folder that we have just mentioned there. So what we can do is we can create the temporary folder. So within home, Hadoop, and then we call the temp data, okay, because that is what we actually mentioned within the XML file. Now, once that core has actually been provided, now the properties, the other properties that we need to mention is actually the place where we need to store the metadata. Okay, the metadata or the file storage image and the log file. Okay, that is something which we need to do by creating something called the name node and the data node storage directories. And this is which is mentioned or which is done through configuring instead the core site, but we need to do the HDFS site actually. So it is HDFS site.xml. So within the HDFS site.xml, we'll have to mention all these properties regarding the name node and data node storage. Well, this is something which is going to be bit more longer than the previous one. Okay, so let's start with the basic property. So in the basic property, we are going to mention what is the DFS data directory. So once we have the DFS data directory, we'll have to provide where the DFS data directory is going to be. So I'm going to say this is DFS data, and within DFS data, I'm going to say this is name node. Okay. Now, once we have the name node, we'll have to, let me just copy this one now. So the other DFS data directory is going to be, instead of the name node, but it is going to be the data node. Okay. And then, as you know, that in the HDFS, actually data are replicated. So we'll have to make sure that we also have the information regarding the replication. So in the DFS, we have the replication as 1. Okay, so it is now allowed to replicate. So we made sure that the replication is now being carried out. So let me just save this, again exit from there. Okay, so again, well, we just mentioned a number of different directories there. So we'll now have to create those directories. So I'm going to just say make directory. So in home Hadoop, within Hadoop, I'm going to say DFS data. So this is the main base directory that we had created. So within DFS data, now I created something called name node. And also within that, in addition to the name node, we had the data node. Okay. So now we made sure that all those files are actually being created. All those folders have been created. Now we have set up the HDFS. Now what we'll have to configure is that we'll have to configure the MapReduce. Now for doing the MapReduce, again, we'll have to go to Hadoop. Instead of the HDFS, now we are going to do the MapReduce side. So here we have the MapReduce. So within the MapReduce, the property that we'll have to provide here, let me just paste it initially. Within the name, we'll have to say that this is the MapReduce framework name. .framework.name. So the MapReduce framework name is going to be Yarn. Okay. So the framework that we are going to use is Yarn. And once we have mentioned that, the next we'll have to do is that now we'll have to configure the Yarn itself. Okay. So within the Yarn, okay, so we'll have to mention what are the specific services. Okay. Now, the site specific Yarn configurations, we are going to do it one by one. Okay. Now Yarn's node manager, we'll have to, let me just paste with the initial structure. So yarn.node manager.auxiliary services. So first we mention what are the auxiliary services, and the auxiliary services is the something called MapReduce shuffle. Okay, so this MapReduce shuffle is going to be the auxiliary services. Now we'll have to expand on those specific properties. Okay, so let me just copy and paste it here. So these auxiliary services of MapReduce will have to be again. So MapReduce.shuffle.class, that which class it is going to use. So we'll have to mention the name of the class, so which is coming from the Apache.Hadoop.MapReduce.shuffle handler. Okay, so this is what is going to be the shuffle handling class. Now, the next thing that we'll have to specify here is the location, okay, or the host name. So the resource manager host name. So we had the node manager before, now we have the resource manager. So within the resource manager, we'll have to provide the host name. And this is something, as we know, is going to be the local host. So it is going to be 127.0.0.1. Okay. Now I have the yarn resource manager. Now we'll have to make sure that whether the ACL is enabled or not. So you would not, sorry. So we're keeping it disable. And now let me just quickly mention the environments different environment variables which it need to use. So we have the, the node manager is there, and instead of the auxiliary services, now I have to make the environment whitelist. So this environment whitelist contains all the commands which the yarn will be able to use. Okay, so starting with Java home, Hadoop common home, Hadoop HDFS home. So Hadoop, now the confirm directory. Then we have the class path perpendicular distance cache. Dist cache, okay. What's happening? Okay. Hadoop confirm directory cache, and then Hadoop yarn home. So if we have that, more or less that is what is needed. So we have the configuration done. Let me just cross check it once again. So it is Java home, Hadoop common home, Hadoop HDFS home, Hadoop confirm directory class path and class distance, Hadoop yarn home. Okay. Now, once that has been set, now let us just quickly format the name node. So well, we are done with all the necessary configuration. So we can now just say HDFS name node format. So it does not exist, it is starting. Okay, so it is trying to format and start the initial process. So whenever you see the message at the end that's shutting down, okay, shutting down name node at Ubuntu, this is something which means that, well, if the shutdown is properly done, means that, well, your let's say the formatting has ended successfully. Okay, so once you have ended the formatting successfully, you are now free to start the distributed file system. So first you need to start the distributed file system. So now you have configured the specific node successfully. Now the next step is to start. Okay. So definitely, sorry, we'll have to navigate to the file, to the original location. Okay, so it is in Hadoop 3.2.1 and then in sbin. So now once we are there, let us see that, well, you can see that the start service start and stop daemons are all there. Okay, so what we'll have to do is, in this particular case, we'll have to start the distributed file system. So we are going to execute the distributed file system. So start the dfs.sh. So we'll be able to see that the daemons are being started. So it is starting the data nodes. And then it will start the secondary name nodes. Once these two are being started, we'll then have to start the yarn process. Okay, so this is something which, as you can know, okay, I'm going to see to that error a bit later. Okay, so now let me just try to start the yarn. So start yarn.sh. So this is something which is going to now start the resource manager and the node manager. So once this resource manager, because we have seen that there are two different components. Okay, so let us just go back to the presentation. So here in the presentation that we had, before we move to the practical session, so here we could see that, well, the resource manager and the node managers were something which was handled by the yarn, and the data node and the name node were something which was handled under the HDFS. So that is what we have just created. Now let us just see that what are the processes which are running. Okay, so as you can see that for some reason the DFS were not started. So let me try that again. So there are two specific processes that it should start. So one is the data nodes, and then there is the secondary name nodes. So once these are started, then you are all set to go, and you will be able to start with programming the services. Well, it is not yet started. That is why maybe we will not be able to see. Okay, because if we can see okay, so we cannot see it from there because it is running from here, sorry. So let us just start a browser here within the virtual machine. So there might be some spelling mistake somewhere. So we can just do localhost, and within the localhost, the 9870 is the one which is responsible for this process. So it is unable to connect. That is mainly because that, well, we could not get the data nodes running. So let me just check which Java version is being used there. Okay, so quickly by saying which Java C. Okay, the location is correct. And then if I read the link from that place, okay, user bin Java C, let me okay, it looks correct. The built-in Java classes were applicable. So there might be that somewhere else that we probably might have done spelling mistake, okay, for which it is not running. So the bottom line is being that, well, you will be able to then see the status of your Hadoop cluster or the node that you have just created from the browser as well, from the localhost browser. So again, let us try to see. The JPS is running only the yarn right now, so it is not really running the distributed file system. So this distributed file system should be the one which would then allow you to start programming in MapReduce. Okay. So in this short tutorial, we are running out of time. That is why I'm just going to wrap it now. Okay. Otherwise, we could have actually gone into further details to check out where the error was. Okay, to try to see the specific settings and the specific environment variables that we declared or included within the list. Okay, and try to see where the spelling or the mistake was. But well, as we are running out of time, I'm not going to go to that particular path. So the bottom line is being that here, running this, you should be able to set up one single node of Hadoop, which you will then be able to use or access through the MapReduce programming model. Okay. Now, if you have any further question, well, you are free to write that to me, okay? And I'll be very happy to further help you on this. If you need to do your research on let's say big data, and then you'd like to use some of these specific technologies, feel free to get in touch, and I'll be very happy to collaborate or help you on that. So thank you very much again. And I'm now handing this over to the session chair.
Honorable Session Chair, Manzoor Bhai.
1 second. Yeah, thank you so much, Mufti Bhai. It's been a very elaborate session, and we have been able to grab some of the setting issues, and we have also learned that during a demo what not to do, because we should have done some of the thing on the background and just shown to the crowd. But anyway, this was necessary, because when we try and present ourselves, আমরা যে ভুলটা সবসময় করি সেটা হলো পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট থেকে আর আমরা বের হতে পারি না। So what you did is commendable, that you actually let people see that what the tools looks like. তারপরে টুলস গুলা উইন্ডোজ এনভায়রনমেন্টে, নন উইন্ডোজ এনভায়রনমেন্টে, this looks trivia, কিন্তু অনেক সময় টিচিং প্রবলেম গুলো দেখা যাচ্ছে 2-3 মাস কেটে গেছে trying to figure it out, কিসের পরে কি হবে, কার পরে কি হবে, কে কতটুকু জানে। Since you have done it many times, it was extremely helpful, যেহেতু আমাদের এখানে স্টুডেন্ট ক্রাউডই সবচেয়ে বেশি, তাদের জন্য একটা বিগ ডেটা সেট আপ করে কি করে আপ এন্ড রানিং করা যায়, দ্যাট ওয়াজ অ্যাকচুয়ালি প্রাইসলেস। আর আমরা আশা করব এই আমাদের যে আমি ভাই কিছু বলবেন,
ইফ ইউ গিভ মি পারমিশন, একটা কোয়েশ্চেন মুফতির কাছে।
ইয়া প্লিজ।
আপনি যদি এই স্টেপগুলো যদি লিখে যদি আমাদের একটা যদি রাইট আপ যদি দেন, ইন দ্যাট কেস স্টুডেন্টরা নিজেরা ট্রাই করে ওরা যদি করতে পারে ওদের জন্য লাভ হবে। এটা আপনার কাছে আমি রিকোয়েস্ট করব যে আপনি এটা করবেন প্লিজ।
অ্যাবসলিউটলি।
আমরা আগে যখন মেজর কোনো ইনস্টলেশন করতাম, আমাদের সময় তো ইনস্টলেশন অনেক দিন লাগতো, 6-7 দিন 8 দিন লাগতো। আমরা কিন্তু আগে একটা স্ক্রিপ্ট বানাই নিতাম সবার আগে, স্ক্রিপ্ট, এবং এই স্ক্রিপ্টটা একজনের কাছে আরেকজনের কাছে পাস হইতো এবং বোঝা যেত যে মিডিয়া যদি চেঞ্জ হয়, টার ফাইল যদি চেঞ্জ হয়, উই ইউজ টু রিয়েলি রিঅ্যাডজাস্ট দেম এন্ড ডু ইট। সো সিমিলারলি আমার মনে হয় একটা স্ক্রিপ্ট যদি জেনারেট করা যায়, দ্যাট উইল বি হেল্পফুল উইথ ইউর নোটস এন্ড এভরিথিং। আর লাস্ট নট দি লিস্ট, আমাদের এখানে যারা পার্টিসিপেন্টস আছেন তাদের জন্য আই হ্যাভ 2 মেসেজেস ফ্রম দ্য ইন্ডাস্ট্রি। সেটা হচ্ছে, এখন যারা কেরিয়ার করতে চাবা নেক্সট 3-4 বছর, these are the tools you really need to know. You have to master these tools. কারণ আমরা যেটা করি, we give a problem, টিমকে বলি যে লোক আমি একটা অল্টারনেট ক্রেডিট স্কোর বানাবো, আমি একটা প্রেডিক্টিভ মডেল বানাইতে চাই, মাই ডেটা সেট ইজ দিস, তুমি এটা নিয়ে কাজ করো। আমার কিন্তু সময় নাই টু টেল ইউ, বিকজ উই আর নট অ্যান এডুকেশনাল ইনস্টিটিউট, উই আর নট এ ট্রেনিং সেন্টার। তো আমরা ডাইরেক্টলি বলবো যে প্লিজ ডু ইট। তখন যদি বাচ্চারা আমতা করে, মানে যারা নতুন আসছে ফ্রেশার, তারা যদি দেখা যায় দে আর নট কনফিডেন্ট, তখন কিন্তু এরা ধীরে ধীরে কিন্তু দে গেট সাইড লাইন। কিন্তু যারা দেখা যাচ্ছে ইমিডিয়েটলি দেখা যায় 8-10টা নিয়ে একটা ক্লাস্টার বানায় কাজ করা শুরু করছে, তখন ম্যানেজমেন্ট থেকে একটা কনফিডেন্স হয় দ্যাট ওকে দিস টিম দে নো হোয়াট দে আর টকিং। তো তোমাদের জন্য আমাদের ইন্ডাস্ট্রি থেকে মেসেজ হবে, মানে গেট গোয়িং, কয়েকটা কম্পিউটার জোগাড় করে স্টার্ট ডুইং প্রজেক্ট। আর কি গেলে প্রচুর ডেটা আছে, প্রচুর, একসময় আমাদের সময় ছিল ডেটা পাওয়া রিয়েলি বিগ ইস্যু, আজকাল কিন্তু প্রচুর ডেটা আছে, কমিউনিটি আছে। ইনফ্যাক্ট বাংলাদেশে আমাদের ডেটা সায়েন্স বাংলাদেশ বলে একটা কমিউনিটি আছে, যেখানে 1000-এর উপরে মেম্বার। সো ইউ ক্যান ফাইন্ড আস ইন লিঙ্কডইন। সো এবং এখানে অনেকে মেম্বার, অনেকে ফাউন্ডিং মেম্বার আছে এখানে, শামীম কায়সার, শামীম আলমাম, দে আর অল ফাউন্ডিং মেম্বার অফ ডেটা সায়েন্স বাংলাদেশ। সো এই জিনিসগুলো হচ্ছে কি, এটা চর্চার ব্যাপার, কমিউনিটির ব্যাপার। উই আর হ্যাপি দ্যাট এরকম একটা কমিউনিটি আমরা এখানে, আমরা প্রায় 60-70 জন লোক যারা এরকম, টু সাম আদার দিস ইজ রিয়েলি এ বোরিং সাবজেক্ট, আমাদের কাছে ইজ ম্যাটার অফ ইন্টারেস্ট। ছুটির দিনেও আমরা 4টা পর্যন্ত সময় ব্যয় করলাম টু লিসেন টু হিজ গ্রেট সেটিং আপ স্পিচেস। সো আমি আবারও ধন্যবাদ জানাবো আমাদের প্রেজেন্টার, ইটস রিয়েলি কমেন্ডেবল মুফতি ভাই, উই আর রিয়েলি গ্রেটফুল। আর যুক্ত থাকবেন এই কমিউনিটির সাথে, এবং ভবিষ্যতে আমার মনে হয় আমরা আরো অনেক বড় কিছু একসাথে করবো। অনেক ধন্যবাদ।
অবশ্যই অনেক ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে মঞ্জুর ভাই। এটা আসলে তার মানে আপনার মতো মানুষের কাছ থেকে এসব কথাবার্তা শুনতে পাওয়া, এটা মনে হয় যে অনেক বড় ব্যাপার। অবশ্যই এবং আমি অ্যাপ্রিসিয়েট করি যে আপনি আসলে এত ব্যস্ততার মাঝেও এতখানি সময় দিয়েছেন এই ছুটির দিনে, এবং আপনি এই সেশনটাকে ভালোভাবে চালিয়েছেন। এবং অবশ্যই ভবিষ্যতে আমিও আশা করব যে আপনার সাথে যদি কোনো কিছু করতে পারা যায়, আমরা সবাই মিলে একসাথে, তাহলে অনেক ভালো হবে।
অবশ্যই। আর এদিকে যদি আমাদের অডিয়েন্সের যদি কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন থাকে, আমরা 2টা কোয়েশ্চেন নিতে পারবো, যেহেতু আমাদের সময় স্বল্পতা, আমাদের জাস্ট 5টা মিনিট সময় আছে। সো আমরা 2টা কোয়েশ্চেন নেব। একটা প্রশ্ন হবে নট রিগার্ডিং সেটআপ, আমরা বুঝছি যে সেটআপে কি করতে হবে, এটা নিয়ে কোনো কিছু না। অ্যাপার্ট ফ্রম দিস আমাদের মুফতি মাহমুদের কাছে যদি কোনো কোয়েশ্চেনস থাকে প্লিজ আস্ক প্লিজ।
আপনারা বাংলায় প্রশ্ন করতে পারেন মুফতিকে, মুফতি বাংলা বোঝে। সেতু ওকে, এনিওয়ে মুফতি ইমেইল শেয়ার করলে ওরা করবে।
আচ্ছা, আমি একটা কোশ্চেন করতে চাই ছোট। আসসালামু আলাইকুম মুফতি, ম্যাপ রিডিউসের ক্ষেত্রে আমরা কি কোনো স্পেসিফিক অ্যালগরিদম ইউজ করি? ম্যাপ রিডিউসের ক্ষেত্রে আরেকটু ফোকাস করে যদি ম্যাপিং এর ব্যাপারটাতে বলি।
ম্যাপিং এর ব্যাপারটা এটা আসলে বাই ডিফল্ট হইছে কি যে ম্যাপ রিডিউসের যে হাডুপ আসলে সব জিনিসপত্রগুলি এতখানি স্ট্রিমলাইন এবং এতখানি ইজি করে দিচ্ছে ডেভেলপারদের জন্য। এই জিনিসটা আসলে ইউজিং 10 লাইনস অফ কোডস, এইটা আমার সেকেন্ড পার্টটা ছিল প্রেজেন্টেশনটা। আনফরচুনেটলি ডিউ টু দি টাইম শর্টেজ আমি যেটা কভার করতে পারিনি। আমি একটা চিন্তা করেছিলাম যে একটা ইন্ট্রোডাক্টরি ম্যাপ রিডিউস প্রোগ্রাম করে দেখাবো আর কি, যে হাউ ভেরি কুইকলি উই ক্যান রান দিস। তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে ম্যাপ রিডিউস যে হাডুপের হোল যে ইকোসিস্টেমটা আছে, এই ইকোসিস্টেমটাতে জিনিসপত্রগুলোকে এত ইজিলি ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করে দেওয়া যে জাস্ট ম্যাপার একটা ফাংশনকে ওভাররাইড করতে হবে এবং রিডিউসার একটা ফাংশনকে ওভাররাইড করতে হবে। এই দুইটা ফাংশনকে ওভাররাইড করলেই বাস ওয়েল এভরিথিং ইজ ডান। উই ডু নট রিয়েলি নিড টু ওয়ারি অ্যাবাউট অল দিস কমপ্লিকেটেড ম্যাপিং এন্ড রিডিউসিং প্রসেসেস।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। অর্গানাইজারের কাছে আমাদের একটা রিকোয়েস্ট, সেটা হলো কি আমাদের ভিডিওটাও কি অ্যাভেলেবল করে দেওয়া যাবে
ডক্টর আরিফ? এটা অলরেডি ফেসবুক লাইভে ছিল, আমরা এখনো লাইভে আছি, ফেসবুক লাইভে থাকবে আমাদের ওই চ্যানেলে। আর এই ভিডিওটা কেউ যদি রিকোয়েস্ট করে আমরা দিব।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ।
বাট
কারণ আমাদের জন্য এটা খুবই হেল্পফুল হবে যদি আমরা এটা
যদি দেয়, তাহলে হচ্ছে কি ভিডিওটা আরো বেশি ইফেক্টিভ
হ্যাঁ,
হবে।
ওই রাইট আপটা এবং ভিডিওটা যদি থাকে আমাদের অনেকের জন্য খুব সুবিধা হবে, মানে ইনিশিয়াল ইয়াটা ওভারকাম করা। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
রিসালা
স্যার, আমার একটা কোশ্চেন আছে
ওকে
মুফতি স্যারের কাছে।
জি জি জি
স্যার, জি স্যার, আপনাকে খুবই ধন্যবাদ স্যার। আসলে মানে এত দ্রুত সময় আমরা হাডুপের একদম বলা চলে যে স্ট্রাকচার সম্পর্কে ধারণা পেয়েছি এবং কিভাবে ইউজ করতে হবে। স্যার, একটা ইয়ে হলো যে আমরা যখন সেটআপ দিতে যাব এবং ইউজ করতে যাব তখন নিশ্চয়ই ডিফিকাল্টিজ এর সম্মুখীন হব এটা। তো স্যার, আপনার ওই যে কোন ইমেইলে যোগাযোগ করব আমরা তখন? আপনার এই ntu.edu যেটা
ntu.ac.uk, হ্যাঁ সেটাতে আপনি ডেফিনেটলি যোগাযোগ করতে পারেন। আমি এখানে আবারও লিখে দিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, জি স্যার এটাই স্যার। ধন্যবাদ স্যার।
জি,
আসসালামু
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি।
ওকে, আমরা একদম শেষ প্রান্তে চলে আসছি। আর যদি কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন যদি না থাকে আমরা আজকের সেশনটাকে উইল কল ইট এ ডে।
এক মিনিট অর্গানাইজারদের তরফ থেকে রিসালা প্লিজ গো অন।
Sir, is there Yusuf sir here?
Yes.
Sir, প্রথমে মঞ্জুর ভাইকে।
Okay. Sir, একটু স্ক্রিনে সার্টিফিকেটটা তোমরা শেয়ার করো।
মনন
share the certificate of. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Munzur Mahmood, Munzur Bhai, for your time. This is the certificate of appreciation to conduct the tutorial session. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
Okay, next. For Mr. Mufti Mahmood, the next certificate, Manon, please. Oh, this is okay. This is the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Mufti Mahmood. Thank you so much, Mufti, for a nice, interesting, and fruitful tutorial. Thank you so much. This is the appreciation from our organizers, TCCE 2020.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. আমার আসলে খুব ভালো লাগছে যে এবারে তার মানে টিসিসিটা এটা তার মানে বেশ অনেক ভালোভাবে সাকসেসফুলি আপনারা অর্গানাইজ করতে পারছেন। এটার জন্য আসলে আপনাদের অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ। কেননা এটাতে এই এত লাইভলি একটা কনফারেন্স দেখলাম আমি অনেকদিন পরে, যেটাতে ভার্চুয়াল হওয়ার পরেও প্রায় সবসময় 50-60 জন করে অ্যাটেন্ডি থাকছে। এটা আসলে খুব রেয়ার আর কি। Thank you very much. It's very commendable.
মুফতি
Okay.
তোমার কাছে আমার কিছু প্রশ্ন আছে, এটা আমি পরে করব। একটু ম্যাপার আর রিডিউসারের ওভারল্যাপ নিয়ে আমার কিছু কাজ আছে। আই উইল কন্টাক্ট ইউ লেটার অন।
ওকে,
ওভারল্যাপ
অবশ্যই
করে কিভাবে পারফরম্যান্সটাকে আমি বাড়াতে পারি।
অবশ্যই, জি অবশ্যই।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
Okay, so thank you মঞ্জুর ভাই এই সেশনটা কন্ডাক্ট করার জন্য। এট দ্য সেম টাইম মুফতি মাহমুদ স্যার এত ওয়ান্ডারফুল একটা সেশন, ইন্টারেক্টিভ একটা সেশন আমাদেরকে দেওয়ার জন্য। এখন আমরা একটা ফটো সেশন করতে চাচ্ছি। যদি কারো কোনো প্রবলেম না থাকে তাহলে সবাই একটু ক্যামেরাটা অন করুন। আমাদের ভলান্টিয়াররা একটা স্ন্যাপশট নিয়ে নিই।
এখানে
মেকআপ ঠিক মতো করে নাই।
এখানে ওই যে স্ক্রিনটা যদি শেয়ার করা থাকে, শেয়ার করে স্ক্রিনটা বন্ধ করলে ভালো হবে আর কি বোধহয়।
শেয়ার স্ক্রিন বন্ধ আছে এখন।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, হ্যাঁ। তো গ্যালারি ভিউয়ে গেলে
ওকে, ভলান্টিয়াররা কিছু স্ন্যাপশট না হয়ে গেলে আমাদের জানাও।
ইউসুফ ভাই আপনি কি
আমার ক্যামেরাটা হঠাৎ করে একটু কেমন যেন ব্লিঙ্ক করতেছে, এটা আমার পুরানো ল্যাপটপটা।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা,
ইউসুফ ভাইয়ের ছবি আমার কাছে আছে, আমি বসাই দিব এখানে ইনশাআল্লাহ।
Okay, finish.
Yeah, thank you.
অর্গানাইজারদের বাহিরে আমি একটা জিনিস একটু বলতে চাচ্ছি মঞ্জুর ভাইয়ের পারমিশন নিয়ে। ইট ওয়াজ এ ব্রিলিয়ান্ট সেশন সো ফার। আই মিন এইভাবে একটা টিউটোরিয়াল অনলাইনে কন্ডাক্ট অল্প সময়ের উপরে, মানে you need to dare about that. I would really give a special thanks to Mufti Mahmood to dare such kind of thing. And thanks a lot, organizer, for organizing such a lovely event. And hopefully this will continue. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me. Sorry.
So, our keynote session has already been started for the last 15 minutes. I will request to all of you to join the keynote session, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again.
Bye.
Allah Hafiz.